Right, so today I want to talk about this story. It's something that I've kind of talked about before, but I want to talk about it a little bit more because it's something that's really important that's going on in Canada right now. Uh, and it refers to the shooting in Nova Scotia and how the RCMP is clearly covering something up. And what it is nobody, I don't think anybody knows 100% for sure, at least nobody who isn't privy to private information. But I mean, it could range from, I mean, we do know that there were several complaints about the shooter, and the RCMP either ignored it or didn't take it seriously. We know that he basically got away with attempted murder. He, in other words, there was plenty of red flags and warning signs that the cops should have went and talked to this guy. Like I say, there were people that warned that he had guns illegally. I mean, they had to have known, right? Like if someone reports you to the police and says, "Hey, this guy's violent. He has guns." One of the first things that you would do, at least I would be shocked and appalled if you didn't do this and you were in law enforcement, is okay, check if this guy has a firearms license, because they can just search up your name and figure out if you have a firearms license. And the fact that we know that he didn't just goes to show that this guy had illegal guns. And if you know that someone has illegal guns and someone has reported you, then why in the world did they not go give him go pay him a visit? Like what, like, so they clearly dropped the ball on that case. That the other things is that, okay, what else was going on? Like there was clearly, like I say, there's clearly more to the story, in that this article is it's a good article, but it's too long for me to go over in the video. I mean, I could go over, I just don't want to make the video super long. But they basically go on to I mean, the main take home point of the article is the RCMP is a broken organization, in that people within the organization and even people who are former members just blindly support it, blindly go along with anything that happens, anything that's wrong. They don't criticize. And the other thing that they pointed out is that a lot of RCMP officers are very, very undertrained, at least in this former officer's opinion. At least he says, where do they say it here? Yeah, right here. After the murder of three Mounties in Moncton in 2014, the RCMP changed its policies, and all police officers were given long guns, and I believe they're AR-15s. Lawrence says that while the Mounties carry the guns, they likely don't know how to use them in a desperate situation. He says that while the RCMP talks a good game about its training, it really, in reality, a lot is left to be desired. I suggested to him that the first Mounties to respond to the scene, particularly the supervisor or corporal, may have been frozen in place, not knowing what action to take. That doesn't surprise me at all, Lawrence said. You would think they had something in place to respond to the crazies, he said. They probably put something in writing but didn't practice it. Tactical training costs money. The officers had the guns but didn't know how to use them. And that's the problem, is that a lot of these officers don't have a lot of training. And like I say, maybe in the academy, yeah, they get a decent amount of training, but maybe that was 20 years ago, and now you go to the range every 6 months and fire a couple rounds. Like that's not enough. And that's the thing that really bothers me. The one thing that really bothers me is that, a little bit of a different topic, but you constantly hear people that when a pro-gun person makes the argument that people should be able to carry guns in self-defense, people inevitably make the argument that, again, it's not a good argument because it's not based in reality, but they make the argument that, oh well, you can't carry a gun because you don't have enough training. And people point out, though, cops, they have training. Well, they actually don't. I mean, they do, like I said, they do have formal training, just not as good as people think. Like people think that cops are like, you know, high level, like special forces, Navy SEALs level of training. No, that's not the case. Like the average RPAL holder probably is more well equipped than the average member of the RCMP. I mean, I wouldn't say that for sure, but at least the ones I know, which is a pretty good amount, almost all of them shoot at least once a month, maybe more if they have the means. And not only that, we're talking multiple guns. Like I guarantee you that like I say, at least all the RPAL, not all of them, but most of the RPAL holders I know shoot a lot more than the average police officer. So the idea that citizens can't carry guns because they don't have the training, that's not a good argument, because number one, cops don't have that much training, at least not as much as what people think, and the average gun owner doesn't have no formal training. I mean, technically they don't have any professional training, but a lot of these people are people who literally compete. So that's just the one thing that, like I say, that's I don't want to get too much into a diatribe because it'll take a long time to explain my reasoning for that. But getting back to the main point here is that the RCMP is clearly covering something up, and for the simple reason that they would be more forthcoming if they weren't. Like, they would be more honest, they would be more open, and the fact that they're not doing that, like I say, just goes to show that something else is going on. And maybe it's not like rampant corruption, like, if things were uncovered, people would be going to jail left, right, and center. Maybe it is possible that it's. I mean, the truth is usually in the middle, right? Like, my guess is that yes, there's clearly some corruption. There's people that clearly dropped the ball, and lives could have been saved if they didn't drop the ball. Like, I think that's probably a fair. I mean, we know that too. Like, we know that if the RCMP would have taken the warnings seriously, which any rational person would have, like I said, there were several people that called the police on this guy and said, yes, he has guns. I'm afraid of this guy. You should look into him. And the fact, like I say, the fact that they said he has guns, why would the RCMP not look up if he's a legal gun owner? Because if he didn't have his POW, and we know that he didn't, then how is that not justification to go pay him a visit and at the very least take his guns, and at the most arrest him for owning illegal guns? Like, he should have been arrested. Like, he should have been arrested. He should have been convicted of, or at least most likely, because I don't know the full details, but him and his friend, beat a guy half to death, in the early 2000s, and he got off with probation. Like, how did that happen? So, and the thing that really bothers me too is that legal gun owners are taking the blame for this. Like, legal gun owners are taking the blame for this, and not only is it not fair, it is a complete miscarriage of justice, because the people, the like I always mention, but I got to keep mentioning because so many people still don't seem to understand this. Most of them probably not people watching this, but the only way to have a functioning society is to um, punish people, or at the very least have negative consequences when people screw up, and reward people, or at the very least have positive, not consequences, but positive ramifications when people do the right thing. Like, for example, yeah, they went to this guy's house, they took his guns, they saved the lives of a lot of people. Now, there needs to be due process, because the problem is, the anti-gun people argue for quote unquote red flag laws, where if someone can just make up and say, oh yeah, I'm scared of this guy, he has guns, go take all his guns. No, there needs to be due process, and there needs to be a high justification, in that if someone's clearly just making it up, there needs to be punishments. But considering the fact that this guy had been he had been convicted, or not convicted, he more than, like I say, he beat a guy half to death, and his ex-wife was saying, yeah, this guy's violent, you should keep an eye on him. Again, when you have a very obvious and clear criminal history, you don't get the benefit of the doubt, in my mind, and in the minds of anybody who's rational, I would say. If you're completely, spotless, spotly clean record, then yeah. But the difference with this guy is that he had a very long, not a very long, but a long enough rap sheet that this shouldn't have happened. And like I said, the thing that bothers me most is that legal gun owners are taking the blame for something that, number one, they shouldn't. This should be on the RCMP. Now, they shouldn't be thrown in jail or anything, but the truth needs to come out, I guess, is the main point here being, is that the truth needs to come out. Like, what is going on? And like I say, the RCMP, I believe, is an organization that needs massive reform. I mean, I think the simple solution is just to let the provinces create their own police forces, because the idea, like I said, the one size fits all solution isn't the right thing, because how you police in Alberta is not the same as how you're going to police in, Nunavut or Nova Scotia. Like, it's not the same. And to have one agency running the whole show, aside from the big cities, doesn't make any sense. So the province, like I say, the way to fix pretty much all the problems is to decentralize things, like not just continue to centralize things. Because how does someone, some top, head guy for the RCMP know how to fix problems that affect, rural Albertans or stuff like that. Like, you need to let someone that lives and talks to people who are being affected by these problems on a daily basis, to make these decisions, because the one size fits all solution isn't working. It's not working. And like I say, people need to be held accountable to, like, the solution to this is people need to be held accountable when they mess up. They need to be held accountable. Because if you don't do that, then what incentive do people have to not mess up? What incentive do you have? It's like, um, paying people whether they work or not. What incentive do you have to work? What incentive? So that's the problem. So anyway, I wanted to make a video about this because I made a video talking about it prior, but I wanted to reiterate it a little bit because, um, the RCMP needs reform. Like, they definitely need reform. And if we don't figure this out, we're going to keep having more and more of the same problems. So that's why I want to figure it out too. And that's the thing that really bothers me about most people these days, is that their solution to problems is, oh, well, it must mean that we didn't go far enough. Their solution to problems is more of what caused the problems in the first place. Like, the poor aren't being helped enough. Let's have more socialism, more government spending. Oh, the poor still aren't any better off. Well, that must mean that we didn't spend enough. Like, but it must mean we didn't have enough socialism. And that's the problem with most people nowadays, is that their solution is just more and more of the same. It's not, hey, maybe we were wrong all along. Let's try something different. And like I say, that's why I think that provincial police forces is the way to go. Like, let the provinces handle things. So like I say, that's the simple solution. So, um, anyway, I'm gonna leave the video there. If you liked it, make sure to hit that like and subscribe if you haven't already. Check out my PayPal and email. I got links in the description. Again, appreciate any donations, but at the very least, just hit like and subscribe if you haven't already. And check me out on Twitter if you haven't already, and check me out on BitChute if you haven't already. All the links in the description, so you can find them all there.